how should we look at the way we study the Torah, the Bible? How do we look at these stories that we're reading that take us way, way, way back? Okay? That's the question we want to address. What's the problem? Problem is this. Take anything we want to try to connect with from the past. Talk about a generation gap. It's hard to connect with the generation. How many? Just one generation. Forget about many generations. So how do we really connect with a story that's not a generation gap, but a millennia gap? We're talking about 3,000 plus years ago are the stories we're reading right now, especially the whole Sefer Bereshit, the beginning of Genesis, and now the story of the Exodus, the Jews in Egypt. This is all plus 3,000 years. So what does that have to do with me? How do I relate to such an old story? Seemingly maybe nothing, and that's why many people take a look at Bible study. Imagine the kid in class. I can just imagine the example of a kid in class, and in these days you got a lot of distractions. Everything else you can imagine is what he's focusing on other than the book that the teacher's talking about. Hey, put that phone away. Just kidding. The first plague was turning the Nile River, into blood. Okay, so we have the subject of this miracle, the object that was used was the river. What is so important and special about this river that it is the first plague, the first thing that God decides to do in this now sequence of events of a series of plagues, in the idea of waking up his people, the Jewish people, and really waking up the world to a new reality. The river was really what the Egyptians worshipped as a god, and it was a source of their economic prosperity. We today live in a very modern world. The idea of agriculture is a bit distant from certainly the forefront of our minds, and even probably the back of our minds. Once upon a time, sustenance, survival, depended on agriculture, which depended on
rain.
Yes and no, because water. It depended on water. Now, how does most of the world get its water? Unless you live near a natural body of water, from rain. So rain and sustenance are synonymous. That is why, in fact, the first thing that Adam did when he was created, on that very first day of creation, let's kind of reframe and get a more precise look at a world Adam was born into, or created into in this context. So when he was created, he looked around and saw all of creation, and something was missing. What was missing in the creation he saw? According to tradition from the sages, and they pick it up from the different nuances in the verses, when he was actually created, there was no plant life yet, no fruit trees, no herbage, nothing. There were animals, and then two human beings, Adam and Eve. That's all there was in the beginning of creation. And that presented a problem for Adam. What was the problem that Adam was presented with? A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but a lot of creations that needed food, and there was no food. So Adam, of course, having a deep perception of the essence of creation, understood what was missing. What was missing? Obviously, aside from food, what was missing was a catalyst to bring the food. Now, why didn't God create the world already full of its food, all of the sustenance that would be necessary? Why not? When I want to make a party, right? I had my 50th year pass, and I wasn't so big on that big party, but let's say I'll make it for the 52. I'll do a big 52-year birthday. In Kabbalah, the number 52 actually is a very deep number. So I'll have a very big 52-year birthday party, and I'm going to invite all of you, Billy Neder, you can all come, and many others. And of course, what's the first thing I'm going to do before I invite all of you to this party, which we'll say starts at 8, which really means at 9, I'm Sephardi. Actually 10 o'clock if you're Sephardi. It starts a 7:45 if you're Ashkenazi. Anyway, so what am I going to do? What's the first thing I'm going to make sure I have ready if you're all going to come? Let's say I'm very popular and I have 400 or 500 people come to this party. What am I going to do first? What's the first thing I want ready for these 500 people that are coming at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock rock? Yes.
The food?
The food. You're going to come into a party and you're going to want a nice buffet. Nice buffet, dessert area. You're going to want it all. If you come to this party and there's nothing there but me smiling, you're going to be very disappointed because you did not come to see me smile. I mean, maybe at the end, after a few l'chaims and my smile is more bearable, but you really came for a good time and a party which requires food. So the big question right now is, why did God create a world and put so many creatures, all of the animals and Adam and Eve in this world, and there's no food for them? It's a bit backwards. First put the food and then bring the people. So that's a big question, and the answer to that question is this. He wanted Adam and Eve to be in a situation where they realized that they were in need, that they weren't self-sufficient, okay? That they needed something that was beyond their reach, absolutely beyond their reach. And that was, in this context, rain. They needed rain to water the world, the earth, and then all of the produce would sprout. Now it's interesting because if you look at the verses, God in the Torah says that he created all of the fruit trees and herbage before Adam and Eve, but miraculously was held beneath the earth's surface. So it was all there waiting to just pop out, like surprise, surprise, open up a box, boom. So it was all waiting there. It was all really done. It wasn't that God forgot to open up the box. It was all done, ready and waiting for human participation, for Adam and Eve to come in and do something and have a part in that creative process and sustenance. But the major lesson was, I need you, Hashem. We need Hashem. We cannot accomplish the goal on our own. The ultimate goal and the ultimate success in this endeavor of sustenance is beyond me, and therefore I need God. So what did Adam do? He prayed. The first thing he did was pray to God, and that first prayer was for survival, was for sustenance. And he prayed to God on behalf of himself and all of creation, and then it rained. And then miraculously, everything just sprouted, and then they had their party. That's how it started. That's how everything started. So now let's get to the Nile River, and it's really the challenge that it provided and presented for the Egyptians. If I don't need rain, then I lose a level of that dependency on God. So they were smart, very smart, and they were very powerful. They were a nation of sorcerers, and they were able to manipulate nature and spiritual realms, and they really knew how to be on top. They were the strongest, most powerful nation perhaps that ever lived, ever. And power was like this midget. According to their old tradition, he was really a midget, and he was the most powerful person in the world. Yeah. Now, so let's get to the actual problem. So the problem is this: if I can take a river and use irrigation to build canals and filter that, draw that water to where I need it, then I don't need rain anymore. And if I don't need rain, then what don't I need? I don't need God. I don't rely on God for my sustenance. Now, foolish Pharaoh and the Egyptians and anyone that thinks this way is that I can do it all by myself is who put the river there. But that's an easier mistake to make, because once I see the river day after day after day after day, and add a few, then I will forget that it was by God's grace that it's there, and I will consider it my own. Especially that we know that the rules of law in this world is once I establish possession of something, it becomes mine. And so once that river was Egypt's river, so after time, it was theirs, and they forgot that it was given to them by God. So you have a nation of people that believe in themselves, that worship themselves. Worshipping the Nile was essentially also saying that I can do it all on my own. Worship of the self. I don't need anyone or anything, not even God. That was the mistake of the Egyptians, and that's what it means that they worshipped the Nile River, and that it was the source of their sustenance and their success, economic success. It was because they were economically independent that they lost their connection with a higher force that they needed and to connect with. So that was the basic mistake of the Egyptians. Therefore, God said, I'm going to strike the Nile River first, because that is their God and that is their source of sustenance. So let's move on to phase 2 of the story. The Nile River has a history. We all know it if we read the Chumash, if we read the Bible. What's the history of that Nile River? We've heard about it before. A very, very tragic, a very disturbing story of Pharaoh taking all of the Jewish boys, babies, and throwing them in the Nile River, essentially killing many, many, many Jewish babies. Now, the basic reason was because the ultimate redeemer of the Jewish people was going to be born. They saw that from being able to look at the future through sorcery. And so he wanted to kind of, preempt and eliminate him before he could become this great power to deal with, right? It's very strategic, very smart. Get rid of your enemy before he's your enemy, before he can do anything to you. And that's what he tried to do. And so he decided he's going to try to get rid of all of the firstborn, not even the firstborn, all of the Jewish children, males. Now, he threw them in the Nile River. What does this mean? We don't have powers running around throwing our babies in the Nile River. So what does the story mean right now? In context, that the Nile River was the idol worship of Egypt, which really was the idea of the worship of the self. Well, I'll tell you, I believe it's the idea of a rat race that we all throw our children into, unfortunately, with or without realizing it. I know things can get very, very carried away. And again, I may be drawing off of maybe a bit of a humor, exaggeration, but I believe this exists in places, not personally, so I'm just assuming in that I know that there are parents that are probably figuring out what preschool they're going to send their baby to as soon as he's born. Because it's all about who you know and what your connections are and what school you come from. And so before a baby's even born, it's already planned out what preschool he's going to, what baby school, whatever, what elementary school, what high school, and of course, ultimately, what university he's going to be in. And so, unfortunately, what people do, without even realizing it, is they take their baby, pure, innocent, wholesome baby full of worlds of potential, and throw him in a rat race, throw him in a factory line, a production. You know, I can bet you, most of you guys are from America. America! Hands up, America! Yeah! Okay. You're not from America? Where are you from? Yeah? Yeah.
America.
Oh! Okay, you're not into the America thing? You're not?
No, I was looking around. I realized most people are not from America.
Well, they were just lazy. They didn't pick up their hands. I mean, not all of them. This is South Africa. South Africa. Yay for the South Africans, but I mean, the country's not so cool right now, but that's a different story. Anyway, back to America. So, I know I look young. I know you're going to be surprised when you hear this. But I have a stamp on my back. Not a tattoo. Not a tattoo. Made in America 1972, which makes me 51 years old. Okay, we all have that. We've been produced. On some level, we've been produced. America made me in 1972 in Brooklyn, which means I needed to get a new passport when I moved to Florida, because Brooklyn's like its own country. Okay, has its own talk, own country, own attitude. I mean, I still can get rid of the Brooklyn attitude. You're from Brooklyn, right? Or New York, at least. They know that. And I haven't lived there since I was 6 years old. But anyway, 1972 America, produced, factory line, rat race. I was thrown into it. We all were thrown into it on some level. And that's what it means to be thrown into the Nile River as a baby. It means, what are you living for? What are you a slave to? What do you worship? What's your cult? Because whatever you live for is your cult. Whatever you're dying for is what you're living for. Whatever you're living for is what you're dying for. Because every moment you live is a moment you give to something. And whatever you gave it to is the definition of your life. And so if you're running from one point to the next, because you're in this race and you can't get to the end, you have to get to the end, that's not living, that's not life. And so throwing the Jewish boy into the Nile River is throwing them into this fallacy of success. I am my own maker, and I am my own provider, and I must become a success. And that means, in America today, money or university, right? Money. I have a joke. I think it's a cool joke. You know, people ask me, so what were you doing, until you became religious and started to learn in yeshiva? I said, I was working on my faith. I was working on my emunah. My big thing was emunah, faith in God. I was just, my whole life, I didn't realize, but I was just working on growing and expanding my faith in God. What do I mean? I mean, in God we trust. I was collecting Benjamins and dollars. I was just trying to make as much money as I could because each one says in God we trust. And so I was essentially building my faith in money and in me, but not God, because it says in God we trust, but I mean, that's the last thing you think about when you're making your money, especially when you're robbing, cheating, and stealing to get it. So I'm not confessing it, I'm my priest, but story for another time how I actually got all that money, but it's all gone anyway, because it all went in the pocket, out the pocket. It's all gone, so I don't have anything to show for all that wealth, except maybe something to teach you about it. But anyway, we'll continue. So one of the interpretations of throwing the Jews into the Nile River is the idea of Jewish boys is taking them and throwing them into this fallacy of the rat race of America and other Western civilizations, is that it's all about success, power, money, university doctorates. It's all this idea of what's going to make me into something that's worthy, that's important, I'm missing the exact word, but with this story now you'll understand what word I'm trying to get to, and that is this. Cute story. There are two versions of the story. There's the Jerusalem version and then there's the American version. The Jerusalem version, it takes place on a bus because many normal people just take the buses because there's not, there's a lot of traffic and cars are expensive. And so I will admit that, I take the bus all the time, but in America I drove everywhere. And so in America, people don't always take the bus. In America, the story takes place on a nice plane. We'll make it first class because, just to get as fancy as we can. So here you have two grandmothers sitting in first class, taking off where? To Israel, of course. They're taking their winter vacation in Jerusalem. They want to see the old city and Mamilla Mall and buy some red strings get some red strings from some Arabs that are selling Kabbalah strings over there by the hotel. Like, what are you doing selling a Kabbalah string? It's like the biggest joke I ever saw in my life. What does he know about? Anyway, story of another time. So these two grandmothers are sitting on the plane, first class. They're going to Jerusalem. Can't wait to go shopping in Mamilla Mall as if they haven't had enough shopping in Aventura Mall and Galleria Mall or whatever mall they're coming from. And so they're on their way, making a conversation. Hi, how are you? I'm great. I'm great. What do you do? What do you do? What's your kids? So all of a sudden they get to the kids. Grandparents love to talk about their grandkids, or parents talk about their kids. So what's the story? Well, my son, he's a doctor. Actually, no, the story goes the other way. First, the mother whose son is a rabbi starts. My son's a rabbi. So then the other lady's like talking about her son, and it's my son's a doctor. And the woman that started off by telling that her son's a rabbi, in the end, after the conversation ends, she adds, my son could have been a doctor. My son could have been a doctor. It's a very subtle joke. I don't think anybody laughed because it's really not a joke you laugh at. It's actually sad. And that is that there's nothing that a Jewish mother could be more proud of than a son that understands who he is, what he's here for, who put him here, and what is ultimately his essential divine mission in life. And to have had that conversation with God enough times that he's a rabbi, that when people need spiritual advice, soul advice, they know where to go and he's the person they go to. There's nothing greater in this world today than an honest, hardworking rabbi. Nothing better. There's nothing beats that rabbi. And the bigger that rabbi gets, the more famous he gets, and then you get to the Gedolei Yisrael, the leaders of a generation, the Moshes of our time. There's nothing greater than giving your life to serving Hashem and learning about Hashem and His ways and this world, and being a walking Bible, a walking Sefer Torah, because it doesn't just mean you have knowledge in your head. It means you've transformed your physical body into a walking angel. And so there's nothing greater. Yet many people in America, many people around the world, Jews that are American first and Jewish maybe fourth or fifth, I'm not sure when Jewish code comes in, forget what it really means to be alive and what that element in you that is the source of your life, who you are, what you are, why you're here, who put you here. And so this mother, at the end, is like a little bit of a, disappointed because her son's not that famous doctor, successful doctor or lawyer or millionaire that owns a lot of businesses and stepped on how many people to get those businesses. So that's the fallacy. That's throwing your child into the Nile River. Not having even any gratitude for God for giving you that river. Certainly, if you were relying on rain and praying to God all day, every day, then you would be appreciative of the fact that the source of your success is not you. You are not the end all. It's Hashem. God, it's God's world, and we are visitors in God's world. And that's what Egypt forgot, and that's what Hashem came to remind them. You forgot somebody very special and important. You forgot about me, and I'm going to remind you now the hard way. Okay? And that's the first plague, one of the interpretations of the first plague. Another dimension of this first plague is this. The word for blood, why did God turn it into blood? So there are obviously more than one reason, many reasons. We're going to touch on one right now, and that is this. The word in Hebrew for money is damim. Damim is plural for money, and the word damim is really plural for the word blood. We don't say the word blood in plural, maybe in certain contexts, yes, but the word dam is blood, and the plague of dam is really the plague of money. And it's connected. Like we said, the economic success of Egypt was money. So what does it mean to be a slave to your money? A slave to money. That's the other message here. It's related, but it's the other side of the coin, so to speak, no pun intended, but that's the other side of the coin, and that is this. We say in Shema, in the prayer that we're supposed to say twice a day, every day, for men that have these time-bound mitzvahs, we say that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha. Love him with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your me'od. Your me'od is an interesting word. Me'od, it means your might, your resources. And so the rabbis pick up on a nuance over here. It says you should love your God with all your heart, beautiful, love him, with all your soul, which means what? Even if it means giving up your life. Because we said what you live for is what you die for. They're just two sides of a coin. So living and dying is really one thing, and what you live for is what you die for. And ultimately, if you live for God, then you're ready to die for God. And so giving up your life for God, for truth, for who you and what you really are, that's noble. Killing for God is not so noble. There's jihad, interesting. There's Jewish jihad, and then there's, we'll call it animal jihad, but they'll get upset when I call them animals, but there's the jihad of Islam and the Arabs is, I kill in God's name, I kill God's children in God's name, or I'm ready to give up my life for God. Two entirely different things. One is holy and sacred, and one is barbaric and evil. Okay? That was a side point, just to clarify, we'll get back to the point, is this. So, the order is a bit obscured. It says that you should love God with all your soul, even giving up your life, and then it's as if that's the climactic, unbelievable, we gave it all. And then it says, and also at the end, and also love him with all your money. And the sages pick up and like, wait a minute, shouldn't money have been before that?
Modecha is money?
Yeah, Modecha is, according to the Drush, is money. So all your might, all your resources, is all your money. So what are you putting love your God with all your money after all your soul? Seemingly you've reached the top, you've given it all. Money should be before or leave it out. So the sages answer, contrary to what we would think, is in fact there are people that love their money more than they love their life. And that's the very, very, very difficult statement which we're going to address right now. First, I want to clarify what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that famous Jewish joke where there's an old man that could barely hear, that's being held up at the corner by some, armed robber. He's really raising money for the poor. That's really what he's doing. He's just using a gun instead of words. So here, I'm raising money for the poor. I'm that poor guy, and I'm offering you the mitzvah of tzedakah. So give me your money. And the old man is just not answering, like, hey, old man, you don't hear me? I'm talking to you. Your money or your life? And he's like, I'm thinking. Trying to decide which one. Am I going to give you my money or my life? Obviously, that's not what the rabbis mean by a person, loves his money more than his life, and he's willing to give his life and he's willing to give his money, because that would be stupidity. No one is that stupid. I mean, there are people out there that will challenge my assumption, but no one normal is that stupid. So it doesn't mean that I'm willing to die instead of giving up my money when someone's trying to rob me. So what does it mean that I love my money more than I love my life, that I live for my money more than I live for my life? And that is this. We started off saying, what are you living for? Are you a slave to your money, or is your money there to serve you? Is your money helping to facilitate and enhance the quality of your life? Or are you just addicted to the power and stature and that feeling of self-worth that you have the more you build up your faith in God we trust? Every dollar bill you have, the more you believe in who you are, because you are defined by your money. You are defined by your external assets. And that is a fallacy, and the most foolish thing a person can define himself by, because nothing outside of you can ever make what's inside of you any greater. It's the opposite, because people have no value of who and what they are inside. They're looking outside for it all, and it'll never do the trick. You cannot put a metal car inside of you. That you can have a Porsche, you can have a Lamborghini, which I would take if someone offered it to me for free. I'm not saying don't take one. But would I give my life for one, a piece of metal? That piece of metal is there to take you from point A to point B. If you're accomplishing nothing and don't know why you're going from point A to point B, then so does that Porsche and Lamborghini have no purpose and it's worthless. If the house you have is just you're gonna fill it up with people that are gonna hate you and just want whatever you have to offer them and not even respect you and care about you as a father, then what have you done? You haven't built a home, you haven't raised children, you've given them sneakers, you've given them computers, you've given them phones, That's the new thing today. A father is a mall. Abba, I need a pair of Kolhans. Abba, I need a new phone. Abba, I need a new this. I need a vacation to Honolulu. What are you there? What is a home for? A home has a real purpose, a home. And a car has a purpose. You want it to be comfortable? Fine. Nice, comfortable leather seats. You want it to go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds? You're not ever going to do that anyway, so what do you need it for? So the idea is, again, what am I living for? What am I worshiping? What am I giving my life for? If it's for more money in a bank account, in a box, then I'm a slave to that money. It's not working for me, I'm working for it. That's the idea of the river being turned to blood. When you take the idea of a river, which is meant to be the source for your sustenance, and you worship it, and you turn it into what you live for and what you give your life to, then you've turned the river into blood. Because blood is your life. The blood is pumping through your veins. That is your life. And you're giving your life to money, stature, success. And that is not the point of those things. Those things are there to help you accomplish your ultimate goal, to help you become the man, the person, the woman, man, woman. Choose. Not either or, choose. The man or woman that God created you to become. And use all of the assets and all of the elements in this world to help you accomplish your goal, not to pervert them and yourself in the process. And that is the message of the first plague, because it starts with the idea of worshiping the self. It starts with losing your focus on where all this began. It all began with God himself. And he allows us to partake and participate as a partner in creation, as a partner in this great world that he created. But when we disconnect from him and try to make it our own show, that's called stealing the show. We're trying to steal the show from God. And in the end, what have we accomplished when we steal the show from God? We've stolen our life from ourselves. Genius. You've stolen your own life, and gave it to nothing. And then it's as if you never lived. So we either gain all or we lose all. And that's that first message, because blood is death. The river turning into blood means you're dead. You're dying. You can't survive with a river of blood. And that other dimension to this message is that means you've never really lived, because you've been living a life based on a river that's really blood. And Hashem is really showing the Egyptians, all you're doing is living a life with worshiping this river, which is your blood. And that's missing the point. The point was, we'll conclude with this, we'll go back to Adam. The point was recognizing who put us here. The point is recognizing who we need to survive and to succeed in the end. And it's not because we are incapable. It's that God said, I want to make you partners with me. I want to be a part of your life, and I want you to be a part of my world. This is what he offers us when we understand the relationship between all of the things that God gave us to utilize, to raise ourselves up and the world up and reconnect it with, first of all, ourselves and the people around us, and with God himself. That's a world that Hashem wanted to make. That's a people he wants to be a part of. And that's what we're working towards.